April 1945. Berlin is on fire. Above the shattered skyline, black smoke billows into the sky as artillery shells rain down without end. The once proud capital of Nazi Germany has become a nightmare of rubble, fire, and death. 2 million Soviet soldiers are closing in. Inside the ruins, a desperate force of barely 300,000 German defenders prepares for a final, hopeless stand. This isn't just a battle. It's the violent collapse of an empire. This is the fall of Berlin, the last and most brutal battle of World War II in Europe. By early 1945, Nazi Germany was finished. In the West, American, British, and Canadian forces had crossed the Rhine, smashing their way into the heart of Germany. In the East, the Soviet Red Army had crushed everything in its path, advancing relentlessly toward the capital. The once unstoppable German war machine was now a shadow of its former self. Comprised of broken divisions, exhausted soldiers, teenage boys, and elderly men, cities had been reduced to ashes. Railways lay twisted and useless. Fuel, food, and ammunition were nearly gone. Yet, Adolf Hitler refused to surrender. Hidden deep inside his underground bunker beneath the city, he clung to a delusional hope for a miracle. He ordered his generals to hold the capital at all costs. But Berlin was surrounded, and the final storm was about to break. On the Soviet side, the attack was led by two of the most ruthless and powerful commanders of the war, Marshal Georgy Zhukov and Marshal Ivan Konev. Together, they commanded a staggering force of over 2 million soldiers, 6,000 tanks, and 40,000 artillery guns. It was the largest assault force ever assembled to take a single city. Their mission was brutally simple: take Berlin, destroy Nazi Germany, and end the war. Inside the city, Germany's defense was a chaotic and desperate mix. There were remnants of the Wehrmacht fanatical SS units, teenage boys from the Hitler Youth, and old men conscripted into the Volkssturm militia. Many of them had barely ever fired a weapon, but retreat was not an option. Behind them stood the Gestapo, ready to execute anyone who tried to run. Berlin would be defended to the very last bullet. The city itself was transformed into a fortress. Every street became a killing zone, every building a makeshift bunker. Barricades made from rubble, trams, and furniture blocked the roads. Anti-tank weapons, like the deadly Panzerfaust, were hidden in windows and basements. Snipers infested the rooftops, and mines were buried beneath the debris-strewn streets. The defenders were dug in, waiting for the inevitable. The massive Soviet army now prepared to smash its way into this urban fortress. Thousands upon thousands of artillery cannons were lined up along the horizon, aimed at the heart of the city. The air began to vibrate with a low, menacing hum. And then the bombardment began. At dawn, the Soviet artillery unleashed hell. 4 hours, over 1 million shells slammed into Berlin. The sound was a continuous, deafening roar that shook the earth. Entire city blocks collapsed into dust and flame. Firestorms erupted, consuming what little remained. Deep underground, bunkers shook violently. Civilians cowered in basements and shelters as the world above them was literally torn apart. When the bombardment finally paused, the Soviet infantry and tanks surged forward, but the Germans were waiting. Machine guns opened up from shattered windows, their tracers cutting through the smoke. Panzerfaust rockets streaked through the air, exploding against Soviet armor. Snipers picked off soldiers one by one from the ruins. Street by street, the fighting became savage, close-quarters combat. This was not a battle of tactics. It was urban slaughter. Berlin became a maze of death. Each building had to be captured room by room, floor by floor. Stairwells were booby-trapped with grenades. Basements, where defenders often made their last stand, became execution chambers. Soviet soldiers used flamethrowers to clear out bunkers and fortified cellars. Tanks fired their main cannons point-blank into apartment buildings, blasting huge holes in the walls. The German defenders, many of them just boys, fought with the fanaticism of the doomed, knowing that defeat meant utter annihilation. Hitler Youth teenagers, some as young as 13, charged Soviet tanks with explosives strapped to their chests. In the chaotic Hausta, house fighting Entire Soviet platoons would enter a building and simply vanish, buried under rubble or cut down in an ambush. But numbers, in the end, decide everything. The Red Army, despite horrific losses, pushed relentlessly forward. They absorbed the casualties and just kept coming, grinding the defenders down block by bloody block. By April 28th, the fighting had reached the center of the city. Soviet troops were now less than 500 meters from Hitler's bunker. The end was near, deep underground. As the sounds of battle echoed ever closer, Adolf Hitler finally accepted reality. His grand empire was a smoking ruin, and his capital was being overrun. Germany was finished on April 30th, 1945, with Soviet shells exploding just meters above his head. Hitler committed suicide. But even with the dictator dead, the battle raged on. The Soviets launched their final, symbolic push to capture the Reichstag, the parliament building that represented the heart of Nazi power. The heavily damaged building became a fortress, defended by a few thousand determined SS soldiers. Thousands died in a single night of brutal fighting for control of the structure. Then, at dawn on May 1st, after hours of relentless assault, a group of Soviet soldiers fought their way to the roof. Amid the smoke and destruction, they raised the red flag of the Soviet Union above the shattered dome of the Reichstag. Berlin had fallen. The Third Reich was dead. The Battle of Berlin was over. The statistics are staggering. Over 150,000 soldiers on both sides lay dead. The city was a smoldering ruin, with millions of civilians left homeless and starving. Days later, Germany surrendered unconditionally, officially ending World War II in Europe. The cost was unimaginable. The fall of Berlin stands as a terrifying warning to humanity, a stark reminder of how unchecked ambition, hatred, and dictatorship can lead to the destruction of entire civilizations. It is not just the end of a war. It is one of the darkest and most violent chapters in all of human history. Thanks for watching. If you found this Look into History compelling, be sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more stories from the past. See you next time.